Today's episode of Motherfucklore is brought to you by the show's generous supporters on Patreon. Supporters like Richard Heffernan, Alistair Marshall, and Laura Pascal. Mila Buicas, Richard, Alistair, and Laura. Listeners who support the show on Patreon get access to a range of bonus features. We will be taking an intermission this summer, but we'll continue to make bonus episodes for people who support the show on Patreon on the €5 and €10 tiers. So, please do join us this summer. Check it out at patreon.com/Dark. From the Head Stuff Podcast Network, welcome to Motherfucklore, a podcast of words. Irish words, words from Ireland, and bent coppers. I'm your host, Dark O'Shea.
I'm Geraldine McElroy.
And listen here, fella, I'm Pato Equivonic.
I'm Patricia Carmichael, Chief Inspector. I can't remember what her role is.
I have the right to be interviewed by a superior officer.
Come here, why is that beep so long? Why is the beep on there? Why is it so long? Why does the beep go on for so long?
I mean, know why? Because it's on flexi time. It's not being paid by.
I thought the beep is so long because that's the bit where Garradine did some voice acting.
Oh,
and it's like we're
wow.
being bleeped out. Like we're recording now. You shower a beep.
Yeah, it's too long. That's the only criticism I have of Line of Duty. That's their beep is too long.
Their beep is too long.
It's probably how the beep is, and they're just trying to be true to life. But it's too long. Cut it out.
So
I bet it's quite realistic on the beeps, but it's definitely not realistic on how clean their office is.
Yeah, they love a clean office, huh?
Oh, they're very.
And I don't listen. Steve is a well-dressed man, but is there any need for a three-piece suit every day? Come on, Steve, for fuck's sake.
It holds the gut in, the old waistcoat.
I don't think Steve has a gut.
It holds
if
the
you can
gut
get it closed. If you can get it closed, it's a great joke altogether. Like, yeah.
I
have two complaints about Line of Duty. The long beep and Steve not having a Scottish accent. I discovered far too late in the game that the actor who plays Steve Arnott with the beard, a lovely boy, has a Scottish accent, thus making him 200 times hotter. And I was like, what the fuck why doesn't he have a Scottish accent? I've been denied a Scottish accent alongside a beautiful Northern Irish accent. If Kate had a Welsh accent, that'd be the trifecta. Yup the cows.
I think that you needed to have like a proper London geezer in that lineup.
Yeah.
You know, I think it was necessary. And like Kate's got a quite, I don't know, is it an East Midlands accent? It's a relatively generic middle of the country English accent. And then, but you've got to have a left from London in it. Gav.
But I think a lot of first of all, for our listeners around the world, yes, we have come down with Line of Duty fever, like many people on all over the world. We are enjoying it. The BBC's current Cops and Robbers show, except instead of normal
Cops show.
Except instead of robbers, they have cops and bent coppers, and it's a show. I think, and this when you scratch beneath the surface, a lot of the themes that we normally talk about on this particular podcast do come to light. Yeah. And one of which is there's the presentation of accents, and the significance of accents comes in because Steve Arnott, played by
Martin
Compton has a Scottish accent, but in real life, but he is not allowed to use it in his role.
A travesty.
I mean, lads, that's acting, you know.
I know, but I want his real accent. It's lovely.
I mean, I've been in enough amateur plays where nobody puts on an accent. I remember one time we did Death of a Salesman when I was in college, and so one of the lads just could not get an American accent. He just couldn't put on an American accent. So I was in one of the roles, and I was just working with him behind the scenes, and I just said, "Listen, pal, why don't you just drop your R's at the end of every word, and then before you know it, you're from Boston. You can park the car and have it yard." And so he tried that, and it was grand. It was passable. But one of the lads in it who was playing, oh Christ, I can't remember the role he was playing now. But one of the lads who was in it was Carl, my friend Carl, who's from New Jersey. So he was the only person in it from America. And then afterwards, like, geez, lads, you were all great, but who's the wee fella? Like, his accent was shite. we all had these terrible hammed up American accents, and the one lad from America stuck out like a sore thumb.
He was Jamie Dornan in Wild Mountain Thyme. God love him. Poor fella. The one fella who actually has a genuine accent. It came out really poorly.
That's the thing. So in the greater London area as well, there's something that they have that's in common with Ireland is the idea that the police force has its own specific accent. There is a Met accent, which is normally the suspect was which is particularly, but it's been often said as a specific Templemore accent. Is this true?
Cop speak, yeah, definitely, yeah. It's more than an accent. It's just a pattern of speech, I think, and then that develops into real life and. People don't actually speak like that. John from fucking Wicklow, wherever you're from, John. But you spend 9 months down in Templemore.
Yeah, nobody else in the world says vehicle.
Vehicle, yeah.
Vehicle, this is the thing. I remember because
are you a licensed owner of this vehicle?
Guard Patrol was it was back in the 1980s. It was the television show where the police would engage directly as part with the public service broadcasting to let people know about certain crimes. And this is when a lot of people
Crime Call, is it?
It was the predecessor. The production values are much lower, and this is when a lot of people became who were fortunate enough in their lives not to have direct interactions with the police much became suddenly aware of this concept of vehicle, how it's pronounced. And there's a few other words as well, weren't there, Peter?
Yeah, loads of them. But like, there's always these little quirks, these linguistic quirks. Like, you know what I mean? Like, we in Ireland, I think we're desperate for it because, like, if I were to say, like, the part of government that deals with money coming in and going out, like, we would say, like, it's finance. But I mean, no, it's the Minister for Finance.
I can explain that.
Yeah, Minister for Finance. Yeah. Well, give it to us, Dad.
Okay.
Because sometimes you were talking about finance with someone from finance, and you have to explain that we were talking about the financial reports from the finance section of one particular department. You need to explain in speech that finance is different from finance because a government department will have its own finance section, but finance is always the Department of Finance. It's its own word. So
you're pronouncing the proper noun. You're pronouncing the capitalization.
You're pronouncing it with a view to clarifying what you're referring to in the speech, because you can be saying finance 2 or 3 times in the same sentence while meaning something different each time, and it's part of language evolution.
That's interesting, though.
Yeah.
But I don't think the same is right with, vehicles.
No.
I think, that's just what specific guards think that cars are called. A vehicle. Or not even just cars. Anything that moves and isn't a bike or a horse. I don't imagine they call a bike a vehicle.
Are horses vehicles? No.
Or horses vehicles. I think, a vehicle, it's a particular type of thing. But this comes down, there's an apocryphal tale that the sibilants in Spanish, the Gabanas Latria, pronouncing the S a certain way, comes down to the fact that a Catalan king had a lisp and that his courtiers tried to plumose him by mimicking that lisp, and then it was embedded in the language. And it's something similar happening.
Plymouth.
Pronounced the Plymouth. Yes, exactly. But this, whether or not this is true, it is the fact that a group of people, be it an actual police force or people from a particular town, speak a certain way suggests a certain, maybe not groupthink, or a certain kind of shared values.
Well, I think it's just the way the communication happens, because I think particularly when it's legal or legal adjacent, like, words have meaning. And so it's really important to, like, everybody be clear what they're talking about. And then that just becomes the institutional culture and how people talk. But I think in, like, to refer it back to our, like, what we're interested in today, like, I do think that in the show Line of Duty, while they all have cop speak, and sometimes I haven't a clue what they're talking about. Sometimes I'm like, guys, I don't know what all of these. What is the chiz? I don't know what a chiz is. I know now because I googled it.
Do you know what OGC is? Or OCG.
OCG, right?
OCG, yes.
Organised Crime Group. Is that what it means?
Yes.
I just assumed it was something. And you don't show me up here. My research is supposed to be on crime, and so I don't fucking show me up here. And
listen, you're not getting shown up here, Guardian. I think I watched about 4 seasons of Criminal Minds before I realised that unsub was short for unknown subject.
So I did. I thought it was something else. until right now.
I thought it was like unsubstantiated something or other, like, but no, unsub is unknown subject, and I was like, all right,
crazy.
I found that out in about season 4.
Okay, I find that out now.
That makes sense
I find that out
now.
right now. Fuck me. But to talk about the language of policing, like whatever about the language that they use in Line of Duty, which is very policey, it's very like, which is a word. Apart from the occasional wonderful instance of Hiberno English from none other than everyone's favourite, I think it's fair to say, Ted Hastings.
Yes.
Who just wonderfully decorates his speech every now and then with the most beautiful Hiberno Englishisms. And I will die for Ted Hastings. There's people out there who are still of the opinion that Ted Hastings is bent, and I'm not having it. Okay, I'm not having it. No spoilers here. This is not anything to do with the current season, but those people can log the fuck off. Like, get out. You can unsubscribe to this podcast because this is the Ted Hastings Stan podcast now. That's what we are now.
Do those people think Ted Hastings came up the lagging in a bubble?
Do they? Yes.
Mother of God.
Mother of God.
Mother of God and the little donkey.
Jesus, Mary and Joseph and the wee donkey.
And the wee donkey.
Okay.
But it's wonderful to see, and I'm fascinated by Line of Duty being such a popular show. Like beyond, much like Derry Girls as well. Like it's not just popular in Ireland and Northern Ireland. It's popular with people who might have liked to joke before about having subtitles for people who have accents that aren't, like, within inverted commas, generic English accents, or generic American accents, again within inverted commas. So it's fascinating to see that the language, maybe this is why they don't have Steve with a Scottish accent, because maybe that would have been too much. But maybe this is, why I just think it's wonderful to see Ted Hastings using a really authentic way of speaking. Is he from Belfast? Is that where he's supposed to be from? I know he's from Northern Ireland.
Yeah, he's certainly from Northern Ireland. I think he may possibly from Down or Armagh, but
okay, yeah. But so he worked with the PSNI. I think that's his character. He was a Catholic with the PSNI, and he filters in. He lives in mainland UK, and they never really talk about the location of where the show is set. But he still uses this like wonderfully Hiberno Englishisms, like go away you cheeky wee shite, which is wonderful, and gobshite. If gobshite could get into popular English lexicon across the world, you'd have Ted Hastings to thank for it. It's just fantastic. I love it.
Let's not forget sucking diesel.
Sucking diesel. Now we're sucking
you're
diesel.
sucking diesel, fella. Yeah, Adrian Dunbar, of course, is from Enniskillen, and I think that they have, not moved Ted Hastings too far away from that origin. So having done, the crime against humanity of not letting Martin Compton use his Scottish accent, they've just said to Adrian, just go for it, fella.
Yeah, and go for it. He did,
boots, son.
And this is the thing, and I think in some ways, and it's been a huge part of, I guess, the show's texture that so many people use such technical, policey, kind of dry language, and having him adding that level of, I guess, of personality, of warmth, of Irishness to it, cuts it through. And I suppose there's some parallels between a show like Life on Mars, where or something like that, where you've got this a contrast between the way one person uses acronyms and dorky talk all the time, and someone else uses a more kind of a cavalier attitude, dialogue policing. Some of the acronyms, and we all know if an organization uses too many acronyms, no one knows what they're doing, and it's probably in trouble. A CHIS is a covert human intelligence source.
Yeah.
MIT is not.
Oh, so that would have been that would have been in The Wire. That was a CI.
CI, yeah.
Confidential informant.
Yeah. Exactly.
The Wire is another show that had a lot of them that I had to Google.
The MIT is not the famous institution in Massachusetts. It is a murder investigation team, and AC-12 is obviously anti-corruption unit, true number 12, as opposed to all the other ones.
Yeah,
and
the 11 other ones at least.
We know D&D is not Patter's hobby; it's drunk and disorderly. Also, not Patter's hobby,
which you can do while you're also playing Dungeons and Dragons. You can be drunk and disorderly if you want.
That's D&D squared. What is it? ISO? It's not the international standards. Is it ISO? Is it
Oh, there's
I don't know what it means. Who knows?
Is it the investigating senior officer or something like that?
Oh, SIO, Senior Investigating Officer.
SIO,
Yeah.
Senior Investigating Officer, yeah.
They should give us all a booklet beforehand.
What you have then, Gaffer, is you got the SIO of the MIT using several chises in order to investigate the OCG. Bollocks, I nearly got it.
Nearly there. You were nearly Steve Arnott. I was nearly living it.
You see, when someone says shite like that, you need to follow it up with someone sucking diesel or saying mother of God or using something a bit more visual.
Mother of God, you're sucking diesel. What I like about the Ted Hastings character, though, is like he's not like the Irish cop trope of like, I don't have time for your... What I do is I just take my shoe off and bait them. That's what I do. He knows all the acronyms. He uses all the acronyms. He's a technically proficient policeman. But he just adds in that sort of homey touch.
He follows the letter of the law. The letter. The letter of the law.
That's an instruction for Brian to include that clip.
My department carries out his searches to the letter of the law, fella. The letter.
Yeah, thanks, Brian.
Excellent. But then this comes into something else. The trope of the Irish cop is something, and police shows and police procedural dramas are such a part of the storytelling tradition of the English language speaking world. We actually find it very hard to understand policing outside the context of police shows. It seems that a lot of they're deeply intertwined, particularly since the invention of television. And prior to this, in the silent movie era and the early gangster movie era, cops weren't protagonists. Cops weren't relatable. Cops weren't conflicted, sexy main characters. The Keystone Cops were a joke. When Jimmy Cagney was in Angels with Dirty Faces as a gangster who's brought to account, it's ultimately the priest and his own conscience characters who bring him to account rather than individual cops. Cops do turn up, but they are not. We don't care who they are. They don't get the final word.
And like tellingly, when the Hays Code came in I think the 30s in America, you could no longer make movies and eventually television shows for a very long time that would have the bad guys winning. You couldn't have that. So you needed to have the good guys winning. But there wasn't this institutional protection of and faith in the cops. So that's where you ended up with the hard-nosed private eye becoming the hero. So Sam Spade in The Maltese Falcon, and so many others, like the Raymond Chandler books and everything, they all grew out of this idea that, okay, the bad guys have to get their comeuppance. It's not going to be the cops that are doing it. It'll be the hard-nosed PI, potentially himself an ex-cop who left the force because they're incompetent and or corrupt. And that trope...
Because they just couldn't handle him.
Yeah, they just couldn't handle him.
Yeah.
And this is the thing. And then what really happened was in the 1950s, as is discussed in LA Confidential and is represented in LA Confidential, there was an intersection with the early cop shows and the police departments in terms of for creating a level of factual accuracy by having police consultants on, but also police having script supervision on storylines they did or did not like. And that was Dragnet.
Dragnet was class, though.
And as this was represented, this relationship between cop shows, early cop shows, and the LAPD was represented in LA Confidential with Badge of Honor.
Which was actually a piss take of Dragnet, or not a piss take, it was a fictionalization of Dragnet. Like they had the magazine in it, Hush Hush, which was a fictionalization of the real magazine Confidential, and then they had Badge of Honor, which was a fictionalization of Dragnet. But it just represented the fact that like the cops had their paws in all of the media at that stage, so there was no way they were going to be portrayed as, Keystone Cops or buffoons or, and probably more tellingly, corrupt and ineffectual.
And as Los Angeles grew rapidly in this time, suddenly what was suddenly a factor in the filmmaking and television making was needing permits to shoot outdoors and in other places. So the studios weren't able to just make fun of the cops as much as they were in the 1910s.
Yeah. And then The Wire came along, and that was a really fucking accurate representation. That's a really good show if you've not seen it. But that also has isn't McNulty? He's Irish, right? McNulty. Well, he's Irish American.
Yeah. Well, but the thing about it is, like the Irish cops trope, it really, really comes home in The Wire because all of them, even the African American cops, even the Polish American cops, all
bar,
of them,
right?
they all go to the Irish bar. They have Irish wakes for cops. Yes. Like they drink Jameson. They drink nothing but Jameson. And
they
then
sing
they
the
all drive
Pogues,
home.
right? Yeah, they do.
Yeah,
They all
they do.
home.
Streams of whiskey.
And this is the thing. And at the point, by the time the Wire came along, and there was 2 points there, which were that the Wire was already the Wire was made for people who had been immersed all their lives in cop show cliches, and they had to find ways to actually engage with the way that people had certain expectations. Just like we expect vampires to not like sunlight, we expect so many things from cops, not because of our personal experience of them, but just because of what we've seen on television so many times. So they had to find ways to subvert this, but also to actually engage with it. And that was the thing. We expect kind of Lester Freeman to behave a certain way because we expect the wise old black cop to be a certain character, and we expect McNulty to be the maverick cop to behave a certain way. And the Wire was very good at turning those expectations on their heads.
Yeah, it's a great show.
And then the other big thing about the Wire was in 2002, policing had already moved forward in a lot of ways, and the big issue was that so many conventions in detective work that we had expected from television, like how long it takes. In the 90s, you'd often say you have to keep a crook on the line for 2 minutes so you can trace a call.
Oh, triangulating. Yeah, got to triangulate the call.
And
people are still doing that. That's still a trope. Like, it's unbelievable.
CSI, you're rotten with that.
He hung up at 89 seconds. He knows it takes us 90 seconds to do this. And then the big thing was so what the Wire did was they made the section be the actual team work with massive funding cuts and old-fashioned equipment, and have been forced to work with this old equipment. And that was how they resolved this, because as they found that as technology was advancing with mobile phones, with computers, with everything and with CCTV everywhere, it was actually hard to make a realistic cop drama based on the actual resources that the police now had available.
Yeah. And then you have a show like CSI that just ignores that and is like, we're going to have a virtual autopsy. So we're going to have the entire body like a fucking hologram from Star Wars in front of us and dissect it and find out how they were killed right before us. Like, which gets really old when you see The Wire and they're like, yes, what's that guy's name who used to man the computers and do the little miniatures? Oh my God, what was his name? I loved him.
Oh, Przebylewski?
No, not Przebylewski. The other guy. He was the older guy.
Was it Lester Freeman?
Lester Freeman, yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
Lester Freeman,
you already said that. Yeah.
Derek mentioned him earlier, yeah.
Loved him, yeah. So he would sit there on a fucking, like, tracing fucking pagers. And he's like, oh, trying to trace the pager. Like, they're using the fucking pagers again. Compare that to CSI when they were just like, let's take all of reality and just ignore it. Let's just do that.
CSI had such a profound effect on criminal trials, criminal cases. Because, like, you end up with a DNA expert taking the stand and saying, like, we have a 94% probability, which is about as good as you're going to ever get with a DNA test that this is the person. And you have a jury of 12 people who have watched 15 years of CSI and CSI Miami and CSI New York going, oh, if it's not 100% now, it probably wasn't him.
I remember there was an episode of CSI where they were able to get a fingerprint off like a piece of bread that somebody had eaten.
Jesus fucking
Jesus Christ.
Did Horatio Kane take off his sunglasses when that happened?
Better bread than ever.
Bread one.
I guess it's a hard-baked criminal.
This is how it's always been. Double Love is a podcast in which we explore the strange and terrifying world of Sweet Valley High, book by book. Join me, Anna Carey.
And me, Karen Moynihan.
As we revisit one of the maddest series of books ever written or ghostwritten.
If you ever read about the perfect blonde Wakefield twins, Elizabeth and Jessica, with their eyes the colour of the Pacific Ocean, then you might enjoy listening to us absolutely tearing them to shreds. Affectionately, of course.
But of course. And even if you didn't, there's still plenty of drama, kidnappings, stolen boyfriends, and seemingly mandatory school dances to entertain you.
Find us on the Head Stuff Podcast Network and wherever you get your podcasts.
We were talking interestingly enough about Irish cops there.
Yes.
And like that at one stage was, as they say, truth in television, because at one stage at the turn of the 20th century, 5/6, so like something like 85% of the New York City Police Department were Irish.
Yeah.
So, the idea of the Irish cop, particularly in American television and film, did not come up the lagging on a bubble. It is very much ingrained, and it it just unfortunately became really, really tropey, like, you know what I mean? Just really, you had to have an Irish cop and they had to act the same. So it had to be either Chief O'Hara from the Batman TV series
yes,
with Adam West, or, and I think by far the worst one is Sean Connery's Scottish-Irish cop in The Untouchables.
Oh, it's so bad. Oh, it's so bad.
Yeah.
And this is the...
He pulls a knife, you pull a gun. He puts one of yours in the hospital, you put one of his in the morgue. What part of Ireland are you from there, Malone? Edinburgh, is it?
and yes, and this idea, I suppose, that speech does get mentioned. We used a lot. The Untouchables, I suppose, was effectively Reagan era, I guess, propaganda. The idea was, yes, the police could not possibly get Al Capone the right way, or the square way. They couldn't just go up and arrest him for things. And a lot of people have said that the Al Capone being pinched on taxes is often seen as a triumph of kind of clever police work, and not the fact that they can trump up a minor charge on someone the police don't like.
Yeah, there it is.
And we have gone from Ted Hastings' Stan podcast to Al Capone Stan podcast quicker than.
I mean, people say, he could hardly have made that much money as a carpenter, which he's listed as a carpenter. But have you seen one of his cabinets?
Does he make a nice cabinet? I have not seen an Al Capone original.
A fitted kitchen and an island.
An island?
Fitted kitchen and a little island.
Look it.
You
could hide about 20 bodies in there. I know.
I think Head Stuff would like us to say that we're not in favour of money laundering. That this is not
no.
We like to point out
approve of.
Yes. Money laundering is bad, and to be honest, a lot of the money laundering that Al Capone was allegedly involved in probably couldn't happen today because financial regulations are much more precise than they were before computers and everything like that.
I would like to take a stand in favour of nice carpentry, though, in kitchen islands. I would like to put that on the record, that I am pro kitchen islands.
We are anti-money laundering, pro kitchen islands.
Yeah, a nice carved kitchen island.
I don't have a kitchen island. I don't have a kitchen big enough for a kitchen island.
No, me neither.
It would be nice.
Yeah, we can dream.
It'd be nice. The dream. We've modest dreams, Gardine. We've modest dreams.
Island.
Just linguistic autonomy and a kitchen island.
A kitchen island. Oh, it's lovely. A little breakfast bar. A lovely little breakfast bar.
What would you be after your 3 stools in the middle of your kitchen?
That's fabulous. Oh, sure, it'd be great. Now you have insight into my Pinterest boards. Just fucking kitchen islands.
A breakfast bar and an induction hob. Oh, Judas tonight.
Oh yeah, you've got this lovely Napa Valley style breakfast bar, and you're sitting there eating soggy old cornflakes, looking at the Irish rain at the window.
But you can dream, though. You have the breakfast bar. What more do you want? You can't have it all. You can't have weather and a breakfast bar. Derek.
Can you eat all your meals at a breakfast bar, though? I think you can and should. All of them.
Well, then it's not a breakfast bar, is it?
I'd be 3 meals a day at the breakfast bar if I had a breakfast bar. I tell you, I'm getting my money's worth out of that kitchen island.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah.
But yeah, so
this episode was brought to you by Harvey Norman's Kitchen Island section.
Al Capone's cabinet makers. So Irish cops again. So has anybody seen Blue Bloods?
I watched about 15 minutes of it, and when they were all sitting at the table being fucking melts, and I was like, I'm out of here. I'm out. I'm going to tell you a very, very deep, dark secret about mine. So when I was a child, like small, like before I went to school, my mum would go and do her shopping of a Friday, and she had to fucking come hell or high water. She had to be home because she would have to cart me along because I was a small child. And she would have to be home in time for me to watch Magnum P.I. because I was fucking obsessed. I don't know what it was. It might have been the car. It might have been the dogs. It might have been the flowery shirt. It might have been the mustache.
It was the mustache.
I was
had to have been the mustache.
with Tom Selleck. And then he came along in Friends, and I was like, I'm already sold on Richard being hot. Like, I'm already there. I've been sold since I was 5. And then I watched, because I was like, oh, Tom Selleck. I love Tom Selleck. And then I watched this fucking... They're a great fan of chatting. Like, would they ever wished? Like, they just love chatting around the table. Oh my God, pains in the hoop.
This was the thing, this idea of that Irish Americans are regarded by other Americans as having a great gift of conversation. This is something that people said that, when Arnold Schwarzenegger was running for election, people thought, he's he's not your typical Austrian. He's perfected his kind of conversational technique by being surrounded by the Kennedys so much. as well as being a film star and stuff like that. But this idea of a bunch of Irish people sitting around the table arguing about every single thing, it's a sentimental image, but it's Blue Bloods. I found it very hard to sit down and just like watch it. It made me so angry. It was such shite. I hated it.
It made me so angry. They were all chatting and loving each other. Fucking assholes.
It was so pandering.
This idea that people who work in shift employment, like cops, like, you know what I mean, and like people who work in shift employment and cops are somehow able to find a space where, like, what was it? There was 3 cops and a district attorney and a
too
retired
many is
cop.
what there was.
And it was too many cops. Yeah. What's the collective noun for cops? Guardian, don't answer. A shower of cops. But that they're able to somehow have, you know, in all of this, and it only makes sense when you realise that Tom Selleck is the commissioner. So, like, he's pulling strings, making sure everyone has a Sunday off, which is just insane in most industries. Like, every single person in his family has Sunday off and they're able to sit down and argue over the mashed potatoes.
And it was so, I guess every character had a sandwich board saying what their kind of thing was. So there was the liberal sister, you know, who's a pain in the bum, and there's, you know, the pragmatic detective, there was the fascist granddad, and then there's poor old Tom Selleck, the dad, trying to hold the family together.
The wise man, he knew everything, didn't he?
But
fucking idiots.
Sitting at the top of the fucking tip. Never a breakfast bar to be had in that kitchen, I'll tell you that. Something for nothing.
Just this idea of 10 people sitting down to eat dinner together. Like, what is it, Christmas?
And that's a Christmas. Do you ever find yourself halfway through Christmas dinner, you're like, God, I'm glad this is only once a year. God, for fuck's sake. There's a lot happening. Like, there's a lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Right there. Significantly in Blue Bloods, the family name was Reagan.
Was it?
Yes.
Is that significant, is it?
It is significant. I mean, I think it's extremely significant. They picked a Republican a Republican god, I guess, to become the family name.
Yeah, isn't Tom Selleck a Republican? I think he is.
Oh, I hope not.
I think I googled it recently because I keep tabs on Tom Selleck because that's who I am. But I think he is.
No, I do. I remember he may not. He may be kind of. Yes, he. But I think I do know that.
He did. He did actually. Weirdly enough, he introduced Nancy Reagan at the 1984 Republican convention.
Tom Selleck in 1984 is peak Tom Selleck.
He's been a member of the board of directors of the National Rifle Association and was once a spokesman for the organisation. Oh, Jesus.
Well, Tom.
Oh, Tom. Like, I don't care how hairy your chest is or how bushy your moustache is or how tiny your shorts are. You're not getting out of that conduct on this podcast.
I'll hang on a second. There we go. He did not support either Hillary Clinton or Donald Trump in 2016, and he describes himself now as a registered independent with a lot of libertarian leanings. So he's
Ron Swanson.
Yeah,
with a moustache as well. Yeah,
moustache as well. Yeah. It must be the moustache. Yeah. There you are. That's
I
Tom
believe
Selleck
so.
there.
Yeah, Tom Selleck, the love of my life when he in the 1980s.
I have to ask: have either of you ever seen any Irish cop shows?
Oh, I do. I saw one.
Dublin
Oh my
Murders.
God.
Is an Irish cop
Dublin
show,
Murders. That's it's kind of Scandi noir, isn't it?
Yeah, I'm not able for it because they do it all wrong.
What do they?
It's really annoying.
Too much about the guards, though. That's the problem.
I remember. I used to love CSI, and then I started studying evidence law, and I was like, "Well, this is fucking garbage. This is fucking ridiculous. We're living in crazy town. This is all stupid." So when I watched Dublin Murders, I couldn't get around the fact that I think it was set in like 2004, and they had a solicitor in the Garda interview. They were like, "Oh, you have a right to your solicitor," and I was like, "Not in fucking 2004, you didn't, you know." and then me and all of the other like legal academics who were working on this were like, "Wait," and then no one else fucking cared because why would you?
You must be tremendous crack to watch telly. Yeah. Have you?
I remember show. This is back in the late 90s, and there was a cop show. I think it's called In the Cut, or
it was called Making the Cut.
Making the Cut. Sean McGinley as a troubled cop in a town that may or not have been in Waterford.
Oh no! It was Arklow.
Oh, even better.
It was Arklow, yeah.
So Sean McGinley is kind of, he lives on his own, plays piano. He's kind of a mysterious, sad figure, but he's a cop. His boss gives him flack. The police chief is always wondering, why is he driving his car right through the PJ Matthews Camp carpet store, smashing up windows, destroying carpets, destroying kitchens, kitchen islands, and the lot. The baddie in the first episode, and this is why I found it hard to watch more, because it was sometimes with Irish television you might recognize a character for something else, but the local corrupt businessman was Bishop Brennan.
Oh, did he get a kick in the arse in the end? No.
And then we were if Twitter had been around at the time, people would have been basically saying this. You couldn't have him, and he went full Bishop Brennan. He was saying, "Oh, you can't get me. I own this town," kind of thing. And
I own this town, you little bollocks.
Just to say, Jim Norton, great actor,
he's fantastic.
Does the audiobook of Ulysses.
Oh yeah. Yes. But is looking for a kick in the arse.
Now you can pretend to have listened to Ulysses as well as pretending to have read it. I loved Making the Cut, and there was actually a spin-off of Making the Cut called the DDU, for District Detective Unit, and I actually really enjoyed it not because it was high quality or anything like that, but for once it was a hard-nosed detective drama where Sean McGinley was the rebel, but god damn it, he gets results. And I remember there's one scene in it in the first episode of DDU, which is like the second one with the same character, and like it was very obviously filmed in, I think, Arklow, certainly a port town. Parts of it could have been filmed in Waterford because there were shots along the harbour and things like that, but they never named what town it was in. They only said that it was clear it wasn't Dublin. It's like, as if there's any policing resources being put anywhere that isn't Dublin, like, for Christ's sake. But there's a bit where his new partner, who is not used to his unorthodox ways, gets into his classic 1981 BMW and goes, "Where's your radio?" And he goes, "I live by my own rules. I don't have a radio." And she just looks at him and he goes, "No, I'm only joking. It's under your seat." So there were little things in it that were great. We just don't have enough of them. But I mean, maybe we don't have. I mean, there was the whatchamacallit where the cops were the baddies. Everyone was the baddie in that one. What was the good one with Nidge and the boys?
Love Hate. I didn't watch that.
Love Hate. I didn't watch a lot of that either. The thing I was going to say, Ireland is so small, and we have some brilliant actors. We have absolutely brilliant actors. But like, the problem is that when they appear in things, you can only see them in their most iconic roles. I remember going to see Translations on Broadway, and Niall Buggy was in the lead role. Now, I don't know if you know the name Niall Buggy, but you might know, sack me, I made the BBC. Which is all I could hear. Yeah. No matter what he was saying, all I could hear. And I went to see The Great Gatsby in The Gate. My friend was in it. My friend Avian McCann was in it. What a stellar performance. It was absolutely brilliant. It was absolutely brilliant. But Owen Rowe was in it. Now, Owen Rowe is an incredible actor. He's brilliant. He was, I think he was Arthur Griffith in The Treaty. Owen Rowe is an incredibly talented, really, really good actor. But all I can see when I look at him is your man from Intermission, the supermarket manager, going, "It's time to TCB, as they say in the States. Take care of business."
That's the same as Joe Rooney, who's a comedian, and I've seen him at Electric Picnic a few times, and every time he does a set, somebody shouts Oasis or Blur from that one fucking episode he did of Father Ted like 25, 30 years ago. God love him.
I was at a wedding once, and Simon Casey was the wedding singer. Beautiful voice, very talented guy. He won Eurostar years ago. No, he came second in Eurostar against Mickey Joe Hart, who sang "We Got the World Tonight."
We've got the world tonight. Oh, what a belter.
People kept asking Simon Casey to sing "We've Got the World Tonight."
Poor Simon Casey.
It was a wedding. I don't play fucking requests at a wedding.
At my wedding, my aunt and uncle had a few, and they wanted the band to play the Eagles, and it got to the point they were almost rushing the stage to try and get the band to play the Eagles, and so the band sort of tried to defuse the situation. They said, "Yeah, no problem. No, you just step down, get ready to dance. Right, we're going to play the Eagles," and then they just launched into "Let's Dance" by David Bowie, because fuck the Eagles.
I'm putting a play. I'm just gonna write down. We've got the world tonight by Mickey Joe Hart from my wedding. It's a great one.
It's
wedding playlist.
You'll find that this was when maybe a couple of weeks after you get married, Gardine, you will suddenly hear a song. It's like, that's the one we should have had for the first dance. Like Aaron and I.
It's gonna be
Aaron
We've Got the World Tonight. It's gonna be We've Got the World Tonight.
Aaron and I just looked in each other's eyes about 2 months after the wedding because we were talking about Neighbours, the beloved Australian soap opera, and the songs Suddenly by Angry Anderson. We were just talking about that, and we both fuck, that's the one we should have picked.
Let's do it again, lads. Let's fucking do it again.
It's a good excuse to do it again.
Came that close.
Mine was Life on Mars by Bowie, and I don't regret it because it's class. Because it's a
great
brilliant song.
We picked Galileo, Declan O'Rourke for first dance.
That's nice. Beautiful. Galileo is it's Declan O'Rourke's best song, and it's one of the best songs ever. Paul Weller, that's his favourite song. You know that?
Is it?
Galileo, but yeah, he said it. It's it's unbelievable. It's class.
I think Josh Groban did a cover.
Did he? Cool. Josh Groban's cool. He does a cop show.
Does he?
It's on Netflix. Yeah. Tony Danza plays his dad. And so it's brilliant. And Tony Danza, as you know, can only play Tony Danza. Like in every role that Tony Danza has ever had on television, his character has to be named Tony for some reason. It's like he can't act unless somebody is addressing him as Tony. But Josh Groban plays his son, and like his son is a serving cop who is incredibly by the book. You know, the letter of the law. And his dad, Tony Danza, is a corrupt ex-cop who was kicked off the force and went to prison. So,
fab.
Hilarity ensues. It's a comedy, of course.
I was going to say, but it's not though, really, is it? Because Josh Groban does a lot of comedic performances of himself. He was in the Office not as himself, but he was in Glee as well. He was in Parks and Rec as himself. Like, he's gas. Josh Groban is a great fella.
He's very funny.
So before, we wrap up, what's cop shows? Are they propaganda, Garagine?
Yes.
Okay.
That's what I have to say on that one. I don't think intentionally. I think a good cop show is a good cop show. But I do think, and some cop shows are pretty good at making themselves look real. But like I said, The Wire is pretty good. I think to a certain extent, Line of Duty is, but with probably a bit more cash particularly for anti-corruption. But I will say that police investigating police is somewhat of a poor oversight mechanism. Even though Ted Hastings is great.
Do you know the origin of the expression quis ab custodiet ipsos custodies?
Well, I don't know that phrase, so...
It means who watches the watchers, is it?
Who will police the police?
Oh, the police.
I've heard of that one.
Yeah. The thing is, they said that in ancient Rome, they realised there was issues with police policing police or custodians policing custodians.
Yeah. And I think, so that fundamentally that, but that's not to say that doesn't happen, because it does, but it doesn't also mean that it's not propaganda or wrong or a poor mechanism. But I do think like I said, you can enjoy a good cop show, and I do enjoy Ted Hastings to no end. And I think probably the reason, like you were saying earlier, he's a very he kind of cuts through it a lot and is very much like a fella you could probably get on with. Fella, nice fella.
Nice fella.
Yeah. My friend saw Adrian Dunbar in Ball's Braved one time. He was on the phone and he gave them a wink, and they were like, they're still living off that. They're still living off it.
Class.
Yeah.
I'd say he strikes as someone who probably, I can only imagine when the restrictions are lifted and he gets to walk down the street in London or Dublin again, he's going to get a lot of people shouting bent coppers at him, or I don't believe it, or
I don't believe
or even random catchphrases from other shows.
It's like, what was he into? No, what's it called? One Foot in the Grave? Was that what it was called? Yeah.
He was not.
Yeah,
do you think people will throw like bent pennies at him? Bent coppers?
Oh.
Yeah.
That's the last thing this podcast needs is two Derricks.
On that note, we hope we enjoy this spoiler-free discussion of Line of Duty and related topics. Yeah. If you have any thoughts about about your favourite Irish cops or your least favourite Irish cop tropes, let us know. Send us a voice message. If you have a favourite use of Hiberno English in a UK-made television programme, let us know. We'll
I'll also take your opinions on Tom Sellett's moustache and Kitchen Islands, please, if you have those for me as well. Thanks.
So do hit us up. Until the next time, much love, and it's a slán from me.
A slán from me.
Agus slán weimse.
Motherfucker comes out every Friday on the Head Stuff Podcast Network. If you wish to contact the show, check out the WhatsApp number in our show notes. Send us a voice note. Sure, you might have included it.
Thanks very much to Kirsten Shield for doing the wonderful artwork as ever, and to Brian for producing us and making us sound great.
And listen here, fella, if you don't think I came up the lagging on a bubble, get on to patreon.com/Darach. Sorry, it's something in my throat there. If you want to support the show, go to patreon.com/Darach for a whole host of added extras, like our upcoming... no, it's not upcoming. It's out now, isn't it? Our Patreon bonus episode. It's actually out now, so get on that. Get on that quick. Look, we've got a whole host of things coming up soon, and if you want to know about them in advance and you want to get exclusive access to chats, to interviews, we even did an AMA and Ask Me Anything. So if you want to get involved in the next one, it's patreon.com/Darach.
Just to add that we will be taking an intermission this summer, but we will continue to produce content for our Patreon supporters during that intermission.
I will be producing podcasts about Tom Selleck in that time.
The Mustache Zone with Geraldine McAvoy.
This has been a production of the Head Stuff Podcast Network.
Lads, I just want to know, do you think that I came up the lagging in a bubble?
Do you think I came up the Liffey in a bubble?
Do you think I came up the daughter in a bubble? Like